Mark Mitchell is Vice President of Operations at Rasmussen Reports. He'll be my first guest here, overseeing polling operations, survey analysis, looking at sentiment, election integrity, political trends, and he says things have moved in a certain direction, and we're going to get a little report from him on that. Joel Finkelstein is co-founder and chief science officer at the Network Contagion Research Institute, directs the Network Contagion Lab at Rutgers University. He has got a big story to tell us about this billionaire who's going to has already replaced Soros, but how deep this guy already has gone. He retreated to China and from there continues to influence this country. And then, of course, Robert Barnes from Viva Barnes Law. And that's his podcast and streaming show with Viva Barnes, David Freiheit. He's a constitutional and criminal lawyer, civil rights attorney, and we're going to talk a little bit about the, amongst other things, the Supremacy Clause after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
All right, we're going to start with Mark Mitchell, Vice President of Operations at Rasmussen Reports. Mark, thank you for being here. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, really great to be back. Love your show.
We love hearing from Rasmussen and all the insights you guys have. And as usual, you know, you're just the facts, ma'am. You're just reporting the facts. And what are you seeing these days that would surprise people?
You're definitely going to hear some numbers for sure. And I would say first is Donald Trump got elected on a very popular set of policies. In fact, almost every one of his major policies was more popular than he was. And he was elected because people trusted Trump more than the federal government. And so there's this mandate this time, I think, that's existential, that Trump really needs to come through. The economy has gone to a place where it just doesn't work for many Americans now. And we have lost complete trust in our federal government, and we need that restored. And the window is closing. Because historically what happens after a party gets into power, in the following midterms, they'll lose Congress. And right now, the polling says that that's going to happen. Democrats are up 4 points. Now, it could be worse. They could be up higher. But what it means if they regain control of Congress is they're probably going to do some ridiculous stuff. It will probably be the death of Trump's legislative agenda. And I think they're going to come after people in his administration very aggressively from a anti-corruption standpoint. There's probably going to be impeachments. And I don't want to be a doomer. I've been offering advice because I think the bar is very low to be able to buck that trend. And plan A would be for the Republicans to govern. And unfortunately, I don't know how much of that we're getting. The polling has been sort of like tepid on their performance so far. And we're going to get some stuff out of reconciliation. I don't know if it's going to be enough because the messaging isn't there. They aren't showing America that we have a path to restoring the middle class, the American dream. They're getting better. I think there has been a lot of movement in the last week and a half. But then this whole aspect of government corruption and really like, you know, cracking down on the deep state. That was always been promise number one. And we just haven't seen it. The polling says 83% of Trump voters think that major agencies like the FBI and the CIA still need reform. And so the work hasn't been done. Now, the crazy thing is, though, for Trump's numbers, he's, I think, negative 9% net approval today, which isn't horrifying. It's been about the same thing for the last month, which is wild because he literally just went and took foreign dignity. He literally just took the head of state of another country, and America didn't care. In fact, when we asked about that, taking Maduro was very popular, in fact, more popular than Trump. And so the message that we've been looking at that I think is important for everybody to understand is that almost everything that the mainstream media has been freaking out about, like blowing up narco boats, like taking Maduro, like seizing tankers, way more popular than Trump is. Mass deportations, way more popular than Trump is. Arrests, super more popular than Trump is. And we even asked, is Trump doing too much or not enough of what he promised? And people said, not enough, 38% to 21%. The under 30 voters, half of them said not enough. So people want Trump to do more. The question is what, when you have a party that is not, in my opinion, fulfilling the mandate they were given? Well, something just dropped in his lap that I think is the best opportunity that they could have asked for, which is once again, in March, it was very clearly validated in Americans' opinions that the government is full of waste, fraud, and abuse. 72% of Americans were angry at the level of waste, fraud, and abuse. All of the Doge stuff was really popular. Republicans kind of got away from Doge, I think intentionally. Well, here we are again, validating to Americans that yes, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars a year are stolen by this completely corrupt system that has failed people. And between now and November, if Donald Trump wants the aggressive action that Americans are demanding, this is the low-hanging fruit. Like just raid the states, Insurrection Act, martial law, roll the Marine Corps in there. Like, let's just get it done. Let's just show America brutal, aggressive accountability for the people who have been stealing the future for mine and your kids.
So I'm a little confused why the party that is seemingly protecting and accountable for that fraud would then be the one that the public would vote for. Forget the party that didn't adequately tear the fraud out by the roots. It seems like they're trying to do that. Why does the public then go for a group that is literally protecting the fraud?
Well, I think one of the main problems here is that people don't change their opinions as much as you would think. We have a very big sort of like Yankees versus Mets syndrome going on with the Democrat and Republican Party.
For sure.
People have sort of made it their identities. And what happened in 24 is that Trump convinced a whole lot of new people to come out and vote, who were a little bit more ephemeral in their political beliefs, low propensity voters, and they turned out big in our polling. 42% of Trump's support in 2024 came from crossover Democrats and independents. And those people were voting for a reason for the first time. And it was because Trump was speaking to them in a way that Republicans hadn't in a while. And if those people aren't getting what they want, if they feel like the party doesn't stand for them anymore, if they feel like they've been let down by the Republican Party, and I think many people do, only 38% of Trump 2024 voters have a strongly approve of the job that Republicans in Congress are doing. You'd like to see a higher number there. And those people who they're up against is the couch. Those people will sit on the couch. They won't turn out. And the Democrats, for all of their faults, their national leadership picture looks absolutely horrifying. For all their faults, they raise money. They turn out votes. Those people come to the ballot box like it's their religion, and they'll continue to do that. And the Republicans, in my opinion, are losing an asymmetrical sort of warfare situation where they don't have the same level of turnout. They don't have the same level of centralized national strategy. They don't communicate as well. And people can say, oh, look, the RNC's got a bigger war chest than the DNC. Well, Act Blue is going to raise like $1.8 billion just this year alone. They're going to raise a ton more money next year. We haven't really seen that much election integrity reform. And some of this is, there's a lot of exogenous shocks that can happen between now and November. Like, don't get me wrong. And who knows, like, how much of an impact these voter roll cleanups are going to have. Maybe we will see Donald Trump come out with an executive order for election integrity. A lot of stuff that could happen. Even the redistricting fight, but that looks like it's going to be a stalemate now. So this could be the one that bucks the historical trend. Again, I think the bar is very, very low, but we're not seeing, and this comes back to, if like you hire an artist, a sculptor, right? That person has to ask you what you want, but at the end of the day, they have to deliver what you want and not what you ask for, right? They have to be wise enough to know, as an artist, what they're supposed to deliver. And it might not be what you said with words. And what America needs is to be able to trust their federal government again. And I think that's a really big problem, because we haven't seen any arrests. We haven't seen investigations. The January 6th Select Committee just met for the first time this week after a year of Republicans being in office. And most of it, in my understanding, was about the pipe bomber. Well, like, what about this scar on the psyche of America and the prosecution of people whose civil rights were trampled on by the Biden administration's political prosecution of the opposition. Like, all of these things are not being rolled back. We haven't seen people frog marched out of the FBI for spying on Americans who went to school boards. The Epstein thing's going to hang over the administration until they figure out like something better to do. And they have to reverse course on this, because this is if I could pick.
So hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could pick, tell me that.
I think America could be convinced that the economic problems are so deep that it's going to take years to fix, as long as they were talked about in the correct way. Listen, we're not going to give you a golden age. It's impossible. We have a golden path. The Republican Party understands what's wrong with the economy. It's been decades of corporatism and offshoring and undercutting the American labor.
Yep.
If they talked about that and said, we're going to fix it, here's the long-term strategy, I think people would be okay. I think Trump wouldn't have to spike the football in October of 2026 based on economic metrics that don't really resonate with most Americans. But the brutal government reform, the window is closing. It hasn't been done. And people have to think back about how bad it got. Like,
why do you think it's not happening? Why do we think it's not happening? I mean, they talk about they've been doing some of it. I mean, they keep trying and trying and trying. And I keep hearing that it's next to impossible, that it's a very difficult thing to do. I don't know why. We see Pam Bondi is putting leakers into jail now. We see the Justice Department hiring people to work alongside of the deep state, which I guess is something that's been done for a long time. How do you, I mean, what is it that's so hard about this?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not familiar with the inner workings of the DOJ. I think we have partially a situation where Trump may have selected the wrong people again. That might be part of the situation. I think part of the situation also, too, is that Washington, D.C. is very different from the rest of America. And it's a system that works for them. It's not a system that works for us. So I've just heard anecdotes from people. For instance, like I heard anecdotally that there is a level of desire in the administration to go after the vaccine manufacturers, to go after their liability shield, and that they haven't been able to get a meeting at the White House because people are shutting them down internally. That's just stuff that I've heard. And maybe with the DOJ, there's an appetite to dot the I's and cross the T's, because we're going to try these people in DC and it's going to be super hard. And I think that they need to think more like accelerationists. I think if the system really doesn't work, like kicking the can or trying to convince Americans that it still does work is almost unethical. I think there's a moral imperative where if it really is as bad
I think I just saw one of the All In podcast guys today saying something that I've heard a million times and certainly reflects my feelings, is the American system should be about protecting us from government, not governing us. Should be protecting our freedoms from the government. The government we shouldn't have government involved in our lives, so we can thrive and do things we want to do. And that is the problem. Remember Reagan's statement, I'm here from the government, the most dangerous words in the English language. I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. Yeah, the scariest words he's ever heard. That is the case. Nobody allocates capital more poorly. Nobody is so open to grift and fraud. Why aren't we waking up to that? And then it just seems to me, if they could, as you said, point that out more clearly and sort of come up with a plan for how they're going to deal with that. But also, you also mentioned political prosecutions and political, sort of banana republic behavior. Aren't people afraid of that happening again? I mean, where the IRS is used as a legal, essentially, people aren't aware of how bad that was. The IRS was used as a way of trying to muscle people. It's crazy the way the government has gotten out of hand.
100%, and especially the party that supports the big government party, which is the Democrat Party, got really bad under COVID. They wanted to fine the unvaccinated by a majority and throw people who question the efficacy of the vaccine in jail.
And they force people to take a vaccine. They force people to wear a mask needlessly. They force people to stand 6 feet apart needlessly.
Brainwashed everybody.
They did all these things. Why can't we paint the picture that you might not want to go back there? Why isn't that something getting traction?
I mean, the problem that I see, and I ask more Americans questions than probably anybody else on earth, and all day that's what I do. We ask questions. We're the only people that poll daily, and America is not being represented by its elected leaders. That's basically fundamentally what it comes down to. When I go down to Washington, D.C., and I talk to people, even Republicans, even principled Republicans, they're overwhelmed by the information they hear. They're in a bubble. They're confused. They don't know what parts of the boulder to push on. It's like herding cats. It's complete disarray. And many of them are hearing from lobbyists and from K Street and from think tanks and all of these people that have very deep pockets who are not the voter. And so, I mean, this happened. There's a person in the Department of Justice who works on antitrust, and we helped them poll. And believe it or not, Americans think antitrust is a very useful tool for lowering prices. 70% of them roughly thought that it was likely that using antitrust could bring prices down. Almost 80% thought, over 80% thought that big tech had run wild and needed to be held accountable. And so this should be one of the primary tools in Donald Trump's economic populism toolbox. Go after the companies. But there is no appetite in D.C., period, whatsoever to go after the companies. People tried to get her fired. People tried to shut her down. And then this is playing out in all these other places, too. It's like, the under 40 voter, if the Republicans lose the ones that they gained in 2024, that's why they will lose. Because I think that those were the final push that put Donald Trump over the majority, a huge uptick in under 40 voters that Republicans had never seen again. Their number one issue is house prices. And there hasn't even been an acknowledgement verbally in speeches until very recently that that was a problem and that we had any plan for it at all. And even now, they're not willing to actually affect that. Now, I applaud the fact that we're going to go after the investors now. But the whispers in the ear are about business stability. They're about profits. They're about growth. I'm afraid that Republicans are going to pat themselves on the back in October and say, look, we really blew the GDP out of the water. But the GDP doesn't give a millennial a job. That job was given to an H-1B, and the administration has only really done some performative things against these kind of stuff. So the Republican Party is not the party of economic populism yet. The structure in D.C. has not fundamentally been changed. All the think tanks are still there for the billionaires. The little guy is not, the little guy is told that, hey, free markets work and conservatism works. And getting back to the government and their role, you're very right. The government should have the principle and integrity to look out for the voter. And that, in my opinion, means policing capitalism. And that is anathema to traditional free market conservatives who say that no, the businesses can allocate capital. Yes, they can. In a high trust society where people who lead these corporations have ethics. But what we've seen is that almost every institution has been corrupted. Academia, education, the judicial system, literally everything, like the entire, deep state Washington, D.C. apparatus, like every institution you could name, the modern denominational churches, has been completely corrupted. So why is the C-suite of our businesses any different? And so, we have, the words are, we have a uniparty global homo kleptocracy occupying Washington, D.C., and the Republican Party is part of it. And whether it's through blackmail, whether it's through bribery, or whether it's through just, interests, alignment of interests, look at that vote on the National Endowment of Democracy, right? I mean, that's not for the will of the people, certainly. And, we're not going to get the votes. And Donald Trump even went after the nuclear option. That's not going to work. And so we'll see. They do have reconciliation bills coming up. Hopefully they'll be able to signal more about what's going into those things and why, and there will be some legislative wins. I'm not optimistic, though, because the one big beautiful bill didn't really affect Trump's numbers at all.
I hear the pessimism. Yeah, the pessimism is apparent. But I'm seeing them start to talk about going after businesses that don't serve the need of the well-being of the people. He wants to destroy healthcare insurance. That's a gazillion dollar, how many billions or trillions of dollars that business He wants to eviscerate it. There shouldn't be healthcare insurance, was one of his recent statements. And he's right. There should be high deductible insurance of some type, and that's it. He also, I heard something else. He was going after another business. He'll go after them. He just won't go after all of them. And I think, like you're saying, that capitalism should be policed everywhere. I don't know how you do that exactly, but have you ever been this pessimistic before? I've never heard you quite this pessimistic. And it almost makes me optimistic, because I'm a contrarian. I think, well, something's probably going to shift here. How much lower is this Mark Mitchell going to get?
Well, I've been called a black pillar, certainly. I forget the last time we talked, but November was a rough time for me because, listen, I have my finger on the pulse of the MAGA movement, and especially the younger ones. I was getting spammed by hundreds of anonymous DMs of people who were burning their MAGA hats and frustrated because Trump's just continual inability to message in accordance with his base's desires back in November. After the November 2025 upset. So it was a really brutal time. I got to the White House. They invited me there. I talked to Trump. I gave some advice. And only very recently, like in the last week, they are crushing the wins. And that's when we've seen a new Trump, in my opinion. And so I hope it continues, certainly. But, it's hard to look at the Republican Party.
Wait. I want to make sure I heard what you said. We see a new Trump because he spoke to Mark Mitchell?
I mean, he spoke to a lot of people. I'm not going to take credit for that, but I went to D.C. back in the middle of. I'm not that kind of guy. The Washington Post wrote an article about it. It's fine, but I mean, I was very clear. It would take a Manhattan Project for Republicans to win this, but it's very doable and simple, and it's exactly what I just told you, which is Republicans need to step back and say, no, we can govern. We can actually do this. We're going to give America a contract for America, and we know that we have a very limited legislative ability to do this. But this is what we're going to do. There's a long-term plan. They need to present an alternative to democratic socialism, because unfortunately, democrat socialism, especially for the under 40 voters, is the default position. It really is. They don't want it, but it's the only viable option for them. And so if the Republicans can't present a long-term viable vision of what America looks like under a new conservative movement, they're not going to win those voters. And the focus, again, needs to be brutal government reform and rebuilding of the American middle class, which is going to take time. And it needs to be pragmatic economic populism. And I think government can police businesses. It's not less regulation. It's the right principled regulation. We need regulations, obviously, because there should be boundaries on how these things. There needs to be aggressive pursuit of anti-competitive behavior. There needs to even be just looking at, well, maybe people are being ethical, but unfortunately the market has jammed up in this particular area. Like, go after it. Like, we probably shouldn't have one retailer that's like 80% of the e-commerce business. It probably just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, we should have the stiff upper lip to go after things like that. And the government's so far from that it's just absolutely laughable. And but again, it's like,
last quick thing. You made a post about Scott Adams, and Scott was a friend of mine. I think you were a participant with his world. You were trying to figure out what he had said that caused people to label him as a racist. Is that right?
It was us. We inadvertently got Scott Adams canceled, sort of, because we ask questions that other people won't. That's always been the way we do things. And we aren't going to clutch pearls. If it's an important issue, we'll poll on it. And one of the questions that we asked America was, is it okay to be white? And a strong majority of Americans said it was okay to be white, like, big surprise. But what was kind of surprising is that among Black Americans, I think the number was 47% answered either no or not sure. And so when almost half of Black America is unable to say that it's okay to be white, it will, in some people, elicit a very strong response. And for Scott Adams, it did. And it was frustration about wanting to be around people that don't think he has a right to exist. And I think that that's warranted. But if anything, all he was doing was interpreting like kind of a racist Black signal. And that's the right read on it. But this was back when people, cancel power was a little bit more powerful. And of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center said, oh, look at this. Rasmussen's asking racist questions. Well, no, it's not. Questions aren't racist. Right. And we reported the results without commentary, right? So that was unfortunate what they did, but I think
and what he did, I was sitting in my bathroom in New York City when I heard him say that live, what he said, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to go well. But he went on a series of podcasts with black men and said, here's what I intended, which was, if you don't want me around, I'm not going to be around. That's all. If you don't want me in your neighborhood, I won't be in your neighborhood. If you don't want me in your place of employ, I don't want to be around where people don't want me around. And he was just sort of expressing that. But he said it in a way that people could twist it and use it and whatever. And he tried to help people understand that the polling showed that they don't want you around. That's what your polling showed.
Yeah.
It's not okay to be you.
Racism has been a moving target over the last couple of years, and the America of 2020 is very different than the America today. We got down to only 10% of white Americans are very concerned about being called racist. And so I think we're even starting to see a change about how people look at the makeup of America. And even J.D. Vance has been out there very carefully and intentionally saying, like, you're allowed to want to live around people with whom you share things in common. What are those things? It doesn't have to be skin color. It can be things like ideology or values or whatever. And then all of a sudden now you have the crazy things that will change the way our country looks that are happening with immigration. And these things, I think, are ubiquitously going to be increasingly more popular than some of the things we're looking at, because the door's been open too long to certain people. Yeah.
Yeah. I will just make a pitch for contact. You can live and hang out with whoever you want, but it's really important to contact different people, different ideas, and not live in a bubble. Don't be afraid. It's just, whenever people have studied how to undo any bias towards other people, contact is always the means. Mark, we appreciate you coming back. Where would you like people to go to find you?
And I agree with that statement 100%. Let's just go after the fraudsters, and America will be better, right? It'll fix itself. Rasmussen_poll and @honestpollster on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, Rasmussen_poll and Rasmussen_rewind. Hope to see people there. We break down all the polls in great detail.
And I'm hoping there's some sort of trend that this is some sort of bottom in terms of the directionality of where things are going for Mark. And that next time we speak, you have an optimistic tone. It'll be very interesting to see if that's true.
I think we're at an inflection point.
Time will tell. I think so too. Mark Mitchell, everybody, thank you so much for being here. You can also go to Rasmussen_poll on X. I think you mentioned that. You can go to RasmussenPolls.com and let's see. Honest pollster, as he said. All right, Joel Finkelstein comes in here next. He has got some really revealing stories for us. This is the one that's his stories, his interview is going to get everyone very excited, it seems to me.
I love that name.
Including Susan.
Finkelstein.
Be right here.
Great name.
Stay tuned. Don't go away. We watch the people that help us support this show. Thank you.
I've spent most of my career dealing with illnesses that shorten life, and now we have ways to extend it and extend wellness. I've been working with the team over at V-Shred to develop a product that has everything I want in a longevity supplement. NR Boost has nicotinamide riboside. You know, metal can rust. Well, your body behaves in a similar way. It's mediated through something called NAD. NAD falls as we age, so we're less able to fight off that oxidative process. We oxidize much like that metal. And NAD fights it, but nicotinamide riboside elevates NAD so we can push back on those oxidative stressors, improving health, improving longevity. The other product is Senosync, has fisetin, one of the key molecules to fight off zombie cells, and we've added resveratrol to that, which is a well-known anti-aging antioxidant again. I don't like supplements that have a ton of ingredients. To me, it suggests that none of it's working. When I prescribe a medication, I prescribe that medicine because I expect that to work. That is exactly what I've done with these products. And I want you to go to drdrew.com/vshredmd for 10% off. Again, that is drdrew.com/vshredmd.
What's going on with your retirement savings? This should concern all of us. Inflation is not some abstract notion. It quietly erodes purchasing power over time. This means that savings you had in 2020 have already lost roughly 22% of its value. This isn't politics, this is arithmetic. But the troubling part is most retirement accounts are correlated really 100% with equity markets. So when markets drop, your savings drop. Retiring at the wrong time can undo decades of work. That's why many people look to physical gold and silver for protection.
And that's why we suggest Augusta Precious Metals. Their entire approach is very different. There's no pressure. They just give you education and information. Augusta explains how gold or silver IRAs work and how physical metals could fit into your retirement account without tax consequences. And they've operated for over a decade with thousands of clients. They put together a free guide that walks you through everything. It's available now at drdrew.com/gold. You'll get the same educational materials that Augusta gave to Susan and myself. So if inflation worries you, Augusta is a great place to start. Go to drdrew.com/gold. That is drdrew.com/GOLD. Or just text the word Drew to the number 35052. That's 35052 to get that free guide now.
And that's just trouble in a relationship.
Sean, who are you? Like Dr. Drew all of a sudden?
Susan's new favorite Paleo Valley beef stick is the jalapeno flavor. She said it's delicious, savory, satisfying, and it has just the right amount of heat. Yes, 2 days ago, we told Kira Davis about the flavor bomb she's about to receive. She's going to get the beef stick, the teriyaki beef sticks. And of course, I love the beef sticks and the venison, and I like the chicken and the pork as well. And they're impeccably sourced, pasture-raised, grass-fed and finished beef, chicken, and pork. Go read the ingredients. You'll recognize everything in there. Go to dr.com/Paleo Valley if you'd like to find out more. There's nothing artificial in them. So if you are a first timer, if you go to dr.com, I was in the dentist chair all day today, and I have congestion from something else. So my mouth isn't working quite right. If you go to dr.com/Paleo Valley and you're a first timer, you can get 15% off there. Signing up for a prescription is 20% off. What did I say? Prescription? That's my world. Signing up for a subscription, it's 20% off. And we here in the Pinsky family cannot get enough. It's in my coffee every day. We travel with it.
He still reads it better than I would being normal. So, which
is another thing we've got to pay attention to bring enough on the plane. We got a lot of travel coming up. Okay. Joel Finkelstein, you can follow him at networkcontagion.us, also ncri.io on X. And Joel, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Drew. Nice to be here.
So you told me you left a bit in the hall before the show started. You were telling us a tale about a billionaire and his wife, who have retreated to China and are having massive influence on this country and maybe the new Soros.
Yeah. So, I think if only it was just Soros. The gentleman in question is a man named Neville Roy Singham. Neville Roy Singham is a billionaire, and he resides in Shanghai, and he shares an office space with an organization called Maku Media, which is a marketing firm that works in tight conjunction with the Chinese Communist Party and is responsible for laundering China's reputation in the global South. They're an analytics firm. Now, he provides tens of millions of dollars to organizations in the United States. And some of these have become somewhat famous lately. They include places like the Answer Coalition. They include the Code Pink. These are classic operators in massive protests, including the Venezuela protests and others, all over the country, the anti-ICE protests. And really, where we first noticed these guys getting their start was after October 7th in 2023. So happy to kind of get into how this ecosystem works, where this money's coming from, and the connection of this mysterious billionaire to the Chinese Communist Party, and ready to sort of give an overview to listeners here.
Now, you brought up the anti-ICE movements. Are these all funded by this guy, or is he involved in all the uprising? No.
Certainly not. It's a very diverse movement, but where we first started seeing this the Singham network, as we call it, come to life. This was a couple of years ago. Was probably, people remember, after October 7th, there was a series of protests that were shutting down bridges, airports, ports all over the country. People were blocking highways. Right. This was the Shut It Down for Palestine movement. And we remember that this was also present in Columbia and a lot of other schools in the Northeast. Some of those got very violent. The Shut It Down for Palestine movement was really a brainchild of the Singham network. And what we found was that these are staged protests, a decentralized network of organizations that are working online to shut down civic infrastructure, Drew, all over the United States in synchrony. Now the thing is, there's $100 million coming from a Chinese asset into this ecosystem. It's being funded through Goldman Sachs through their donor advised fund, and tens of millions are going into revolutionary organizations that are shutting down American infrastructure. Right now, that's a kind of a creepy capacity that you could shut down American bridges. The Department of Homeland Security was calling us. We were getting calls from the Port Authority. They're saying, who are these people? Why is it that when these people get arrested, they're back within a day, they're back? And why is this so well organized? Where's this coming from? Okay, so if you're an enemy of the United States and you have the ability to work with media companies, not-for-profit organizations, and pay Americans to come up to do these kinds of things. Listen, something tells me this isn't about Palestine, Drew. This is about being able to shut down the country and grab people's revolutionary sentiment and turn it against the West.
Well, it's always I try to understand these people's point of view, and like Soros included. What are they doing? Why do they do it? How did this guy make his money? And was he always a Chinese operative? Did he retreat to China because he started getting into territory that was problematic and he's sort of hiding out there? I mean, who is this guy? What happened?
So, the question is, how did Roy get his start here? And really, he sold a major tech and marketing firm. And he sold it for close to, I think it was $700 million. And he'd always been somebody who was sort of like, somebody who was sympathetic towards socialism and sympathetic towards these kinds of ideas. But when he ended up having an exit on ThoughtWorks, which is a splashy company that he stepped back from, his wealth is quite opaque. His funding, in about 2010. He started becoming enamored with China, and a lot of his business operations started getting around to China. And he met with high-level officials with the CCP on specific conferences to promote the CCP's agenda, to expand their influence, and to use marketing and to use these kinds of tactics, information tactics, to spread and allow for a global and more competitive China. Right. So was he brainwashed? Was he turned? Was he already sort of inclined that way? How do we understand what happened here? Yeah. So it's clear that around 2010 he became far more involved in extreme left-wing politics. He married somebody who's the head of Code Pink, which is a very kind of left-leaning organization, very politically active. But really, the New York Times in 2023, in mid-2023, came out with a report with a lot of the receipts showing that Neville Singham is acting as a Chinese asset. And so when we showed that his organization was pouring money into many of the same groups, figures that were leading the Venezuela protests, the Iran protests, right? When we showed that was happening, Congress took it seriously. Oversight started an investigation. Ways and Means began demanding letters from a lot of these different organizations. IRS looks into investigate them to strip them to 501c3s, right? So, we think this is possibly the tip of the iceberg, right? That you have these organizations that people join for romantic reasons. I'm not sure they know that this is a CCP information operation in American soil. They don't know.
Not. Of course they don't know. No, of course not. They're idealists. They're ideologues. Yeah. And I don't understand how this country allows that to go on. That's the part. I mean, Soros is a little more sort of, in the shadows. This is somebody living in China, turned by China. Maybe even his business was sort of promulgated by China. I don't know. Their money may have been involved with it. I don't know. Maybe that's how they turned him. I don't know.
It's totally possible. And with the CCP, the way that the Chinese Communist Party works is that the senior members of the Politburo and the folks that are leaders there are also very heavily involved in Chinese industry. And they become sort of like those things become deeply enmeshed. And that's the way that political power works in China. So it's impossible to separate political power and industrial power in China. Those things act as a block. That makes sense. So there's certainly haunting. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna switch topics a little bit. I mean, is there anything going to be done with this? Do we know?
Well, I think we know that Ways and Means and Oversight, and when our report first came out, Senator Rubio at the time, now Secretary of State Rubio, immediately wrote to the Department of Justice demanding that they act on this. But listen, guys, I have to tell you, the same organization was absolutely instrumental in the political victory of Mamdani, right? So you can see that there's an infrastructure that's taken root in this country. And it's not just that these are foreign elements. Listen, if they were benign foreign elements, there's nothing wrong. There's not exactly nothing wrong with that. But this is far worse than that.
Right.
They're putting on an impersonation of being American organizations. They're getting a tax deduction. They're doing that for destroying our country. Okay, so this is really unthinkable that they're taking the instruments of freedom and inverting them in this way. And it's not just some citizen who has, an itch to scratch. This is an enemy nation that's taking root inside the paperwork of 501c3s and disguising itself as America. Okay, so we need to get beneath this, and we need to be fast about it, because the role they're playing in our politics, the role they're playing in New York City, where many of these places, the Answer Coalition, the People's Forum, Breakthrough Media, these anarchist / highly revolutionary ideological organizations with creepy relationships with enemies in the United States, they're influencing our politics in ways that are transforming things. They're transforming our norms. Right. So Mamdani and his victory, we know that the niece of Singham, Alicia Goodwin Singham, was a key affiliate for Mamdani for years. The two of them, I think, had been arrested together at protests, or she had been perhaps protests he was going to. So, Alicia Goodwin became the head of Jews from Mamdani, which was an essential block of voters to get in power in New York. Meanwhile, the People's Forum, which receives tens of millions of dollars from Singham, was like a home away from home for the Mamdani campaign. Numerous people going door knocking came out of that shop.
And that's all CCP funded, or at least this funded by this guy who's And do you think, do people, anyone in Mamdani's organization know that's where it's coming from? Would they deny it? Would they say, oh, you're just paranoid?
Look, I think amongst many of these organizations, there are a set of anti-American sympathies. Sometimes it's naive. Sometimes there are people who want a socialist revolution in the United States, and it's a free country. You can want that, right? But they find there's one of two things that happen to people in the upper echelons of these organizations. Either they stop asking questions about where the money's coming from, or they just don't care. Mm-hmm. They know and they don't care.
Right.
So I think that this is common. Sense. We're finding this with a lot, Drew. We're finding this with a lot of these different organizations. We're seeing this with the DSA, with the Democratic Socialists of America themselves. The entanglements that exist within the influencer sphere, within the 501c3 sphere and the 501c4 sphere, these entanglements, we've got to get to the bottom of them. We're seeing what's happening in places like Minnesota. We're seeing what's happening in places like California. There's a marriage between the corrupt practices of states who don't want anyone investigating what's really happening, and a set of actors who go beyond that corruption well into maliciousness, who seek to actually utilize that.
We have what I was going to bring up was the National Endowment for Democracy and the Global Disinformation Index, I guess it's called, or initiative, whatever. It all just seems bullshit to me, but they pushed through a bunch of funds today, as I understand it, and they're funded up by this government. And yet, isn't the global disinformation push, is that got the CCP gloss over it too?
No, I think it's fair to say that no one has the monopoly on. There's a difference between bad ideas and malicious infestation of the United States for revolutionary purposes. They're often bedfellows, but that doesn't make them identical. The disinformation index.
But are they only interested in us, or are they interested in getting the West kind of destroy itself in general?
Yeah, it's the West in general, but I think that it's, America is, America still has a vision for the West. In Europe, they've stopped having kids, for crying out loud. Right. And so I think that the most important bastion, the hope of the West, lies in the vision of the founding fathers of this country. And we've got to connect to that again. It's really important that we connect to what it means to be an American and the value that has. Right. And I think when you see the way that our children have become so kind of perennially online, and they're sucked in by these causes. They're sucked in by these causes. They're not having kids of their own. They're the kids are the causes they're having, and they want to be the kids. So we've got to think about how we reach these people.
And then there's toxic empathy that is running amok everywhere. It's like, I care. I just care so much. It's like, you don't know how to care, really. I mean, people again, I just have my model of working in mental health for so long that you can care, but it doesn't mean you indulge. Indulging people ends up making them sicker, more disturbed, less happy. And containment and purpose and hard work, all these things. That's real empathy, and it's very difficult to get people to do that.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and I think it's not a coincidence that listen, the CCP, these guys have armies of cognitive neuroscientists. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. You're a psychiatrist, and so it's no coincidence that the language that's being used to deface the dreams of our founding fathers is the language of compassion. It's the warmth of collectivism, right? And so
have you seen? By the way, have you seen
communism?
Have you seen Pluribus, these miniseries?
No, I don't watch TV, and I don't regret that, but I do miss some good ones by virtue of it.
I suggest you watch it because it's an exploration of how the warm embrace. If you take it to its logical extremes, and it's different than totalitarianism and those sorts of extremes, it goes to a very different place, and it's really interesting exploration.
The woman in it just won a
Golden Globe.
Yeah,
I don't think they knew what they were voting for. I don't think they understood that that's what this was about: collectivism run amok. And it's going to be efforts like that are going to have to. We're going to need to tell stories and use mechanisms to get people to look at the reality of things, and then how do we get people interested in the history of this country? I don't know how we do that.
Golden Globes mean anything. You shouldn't watch that either. So,
Susie, do you have any questions about the CCP? I know gets you very exercised.
I've been talking about this for a long time, that the Chinese are behind everything. They've been planning it for a long time, and we should be watching our back, because this is the kind of thing that's going to get bigger and bigger. It's just the way it is.
And guys, really what brings this together the most, honestly, is the CCP involvement in TikTok. We saw this very early on. The NCRI was at the forefront of kind of unveiling the data that showed.
The choir here.
Yeah, well, but guys, it's funny. Can't you see how these things line up? I mean, it's like it's a classic information operation, because on the one hand, what you do is you provide youth with things that really stop them from growing as people, right? And once they're sucked into something that toxic, the only thing that instinctively what they do is feel like victims. The world's unfair. That explains why I'm not capable. Right. And then what can be sold to them? What can be sold to them? How about a revolutionary ideology? It's not your fault. You're part of a romantic movement that's always been oppressed. And Drew, how many times have you seen this on your chair? I'm sure like bazillions of times. People then go on sort of a significance quest, right? And they will reach for these ideologies. And who's selling them? Wouldn't you know it? TikTok and the Chinese Communist Party. So I really think we have some thinking to do about how we put the cognitive guardrails back on, how we teach our children not just about our history, but the importance of sacrifice and getting them offline.
Yes.
You know what? We get banned on TikTok every time we go live. Are we live today on TikTok, Caleb? Because I bet we're banned already.
They didn't kick us off this week. We're still up this week for some reason.
Oh, we have.
Well, give them a few minutes.
We haven't mentioned something weird, anything forbidden about COVID or.
Oh no, I turn it off my phone because it finds me. It knows what I'm talking about. It follows me. I will not sign on to that. And Caleb keeps doing it. I don't know why.
Well, you mentioned significance pursuits, and again, I'm an internist, addictionologist, but I work in mental health a lot, and the significance thing when it's about saving the world. That is not a life of meaning making. A life of meaning making is helping another human being. Looking for significance and changing the world is a narcissistic pursuit, pure and simple, 100% of the time. Yeah, and so it's a tell, and we've had a big narcissistic turn. And I know that's not a popular kind of neurocognitive construct, but we have had a lot of those characteristics in our personality now. Do you know Mark Chankisi?
The name sounds familiar. Tell me who he is, and I'll see if I remember him.
He's a neuroscientist, also a physicist and things, and he does a lot of talking about how these things really get going in societies. And his point consistently is that these these bad ideas are actualized from the bottom up. There may be some top down sort of influence going on, but it's got the bottom up
that's
has got to bring
true.
it into life.
No, and that's why we call our organization the Network Contagion Research Institute, because contagions basically spread unless you figure out how they're replicating and stop them. These aren't things that stop; they're things that are stopped. So either the gradient runs out, or we figured out what a vaccine looks like. We know how to stop it.
So what is how would you characterize the contagions that have gripped us right now? Are there 2 or 3 major ones that you're looking at and trying to figure out how to stop, or is it each of these little contagions that are, sort of underway and being highly supported from billionaires?
Well, I mean, you're asking one of my favorite questions, and I think it goes to this. It goes to kind of, how do we become adults in the room, in our own lives? And it's like we can see that, I tell people all the time, you've experienced what it's like when the lights go out because your phone's on and your kid's trying to ask you a question. And in that moment, you don't hear it and you're distracted by something, right? And when that happens, the people you love disappear. In that moment, the people you love disappear. And who else disappears? You disappear, right? And so I think and then what happens if you keep doing that is there's no one home, right? If you keep doing that, there's no one home to check on where the bugs might be growing, where the warts are, right? There's no one there to see it. Okay, listen, that's not just happening to us as people. That's happening to us as institutions. That's what's happening in our academy, where we're getting billions of dollars of foreign funding, right? So much of it from China, so much of it from Qatar. That's what's happening in our courts. That's what's happening in our 501c3s. That's what's happening online. There's no one home, right? And so we've got to figure out how we break the spell as a nation. We've got to stop the kind of spectacle politics and the Worldwide Wrestling Federation games and really think about the problems beneath the surface. Really, really look at those. So, I think I'm optimistic we'll get there. I hope it's not because things are so painful we have to wake up. I hope we go there more voluntarily. But it's time for us to remember what it is. Good.
Yeah, I feel like COVID opened a lot of our eyes, and so that's certainly myself. And in a weird way, COVID did us as ridiculous as it was. It did us a favor, and I hope that was at least the. I know. Well, I think 8 to 15-year-olds are going to end up, because those are the ones that were so damaged by this whole operation in states like California. Yeah. And I think they're going to end up really angry once they kind of wake up and sort of, they're going to be pissed.
I mean, listen, I will say this, and I think maybe the people who are more conservative need to see this, that the kids we're dealing with at the other end of this, have been raised on 10 hours a day of social media, right? 8 to 10 hours a day of social media.
I know.
I mean, that is unbelievable. Yeah. And then on top of that, Drew, they had to go through COVID. So they lost schooling. Yeah. I mean, they've been hit really. We have to take that into account, that there's a remediation that's needed there. There's a fundamental block that's if we're gonna really be serious about building up our country, we need a strong remediation on human resources. And that needs to be a focus for people who are more conservatively, because they look at these kids and there's blame. They say, oh, these kids, and who loves that more than anyone else? The communists telling them that the parents got it wrong and you should go throw them out.
Oh.
So we have to really come to this by being adults in the room ourselves, and looking at what's happened to them. There's good reason. I mean, I don't want to say there's good reasons, but there are sound kind of historical and kind of psychodynamic reasons why our youth are so kind of like, like despondent and why they become so politically weirded. We have to be sensitive to that.
I am immediately going to sign up for networkcontagion.us and also NCRI. Hang on. NCRI_IO on X. Susan, go ahead.
So I decided to go on TikTok to see what was going on over there. Yeah, it's still on. Funny. We're still on the line. Hi, everybody. Yeah. Lauren asked me, what is a science officer?
Oh, chief science officer. So look, I did my PhD at Princeton. A lot of the labs there were inspired by Bell Labs. So, more flat-ish hierarchies and very multidisciplinary, no boxes. I work with anthropologists. I work with machine learning experts, geographers. I work with OSINT analysts, engineers, all kinds of disciplines, because the problems we have don't have boxes. So a chief science officer has to overlook all of that. I run 3 labs in the University of Miami, University of Maryland, and also at Rutgers. And I direct these labs in various disciplines. So I have to kind of sign off on the science that comes out of our shop. And that's really hard because we do a lot. So that's why I'm a chief science officer.
I found you. I'm following.
He does a lot.
I hope the institutions that where you roam are supportive. It worries me.
Yeah, well, listen. I mean,
your work, but,
thank you. So
Drew, another time, Drew, we should talk about the universities and the foreign funding there. We were foremost. The NCRI was one of the foremost organizations in reporting on this problem and the ideology that was growing there. So we definitely know those problems, and we see them every day.
I'll bring you back. We'll do that. I appreciate you being here, Joel.
Paying a lot of money for that ideology.
I know. Don't even start me.
It's unbelievable.
We will see you. Hopefully, we'll see you very soon. And I'm following you on X, so I'll look for you there. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks so much, Dr. Drew. Good seeing you. Take care, guys.
So nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Ta-ta.
Okay, and we're going to wrap this up with the one and only Robert Barnes. Viva and Barnes. Let's see. You can
God,
find.
He was fun. I like that.
I told you like him.
I know. I'm glad I got back in time.
BarnesLawLLP.com. Barnes_law on X. And I want to talk about the supremacy clause. I want to understand why we're not doing more with that after this.
More of our audience is taking health and wellness into their own hands, and they're doing it with The Wellness Company. For a discount on the best-selling products and everything on their website, for that matter, go to drdrew.com/TWC. The medical emergency kits are among the most popular items. There are 8 different kits, each depending on your individual needs. Inside, you'll find antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitics, first aid, anti-nauseal, skin treatments, and a kids kit with EpiPen and one for travel. The advantage to having an emergency kit in the house is immediacy. You don't have to run to the urgent care and spend a ton of money for all that infrastructure or wait for the pharmacy to open or try to find a doctor. And then there's Ultimate Spike Detox Supplement with nattokinase, turmeric, and bromelain. It has helped the vaccine injured. And anyone who is concerned about cardiovascular issues caused by lingering spike from the virus or the shots, the Ultimate Spike Detox is for you. One of TWC's top sellers is a topical ivermectin cream. It treats inflammation of the skin, issues like rosacea. Finally, to curb appetite and support a healthy metabolism, there's Drop. And while jury is still out on the long-term effects of GLP-1s, you can go with Drop. It's a breakthrough peptide that targets the GLP-1 made by your own body. The Wellness Company is always innovating. So go to drdrew.com/TWC to see what they have to offer and get a 10% discount there. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites, It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
The other day he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, the V-shred's working." He likes it when I try to look good for him. That's all.
You're nice. There's an excitement that comes with doing these kinds of workout that kind of sustains you through the day.
It's exhilarating.
It's not working out hours in the gym. It's not running on a treadmill forever. It's not killing yourself with diet. These are all very reasonable recommendations. You just got to follow it. We're actually really genuinely very excited about what we're getting out of this. We like doing it together. We're both in on this, and it's been a real fun adventure. I don't know where we stop.
In the first 2 weeks, I lost 5 pounds. So There you go.
In your 20s, it's easy, right? We put on muscle easily. We're fit. We got tons of stamina. But as you get older, you may not be able to lose weight as quickly or as easily. You may not be able to put muscle on so easily. And joints and muscles sometimes start to hurt. And you may think or may have been told that there's nothing you can do about it other than taking more pills, eating more salads, or just spending endless hours at the gym. Well, that isn't true. Thousands of people are in the best shape of their lives merely because they've taken the time to do 3 things. No crazy diets, no extraordinary workouts that can injure yourself or exhaust yourself. Just a simple plan that has been proven to work. Rather than me explaining this to you for 30 minutes, there's a 30-second quiz you can take. So if you want to learn more right now, click the link below to get your personal life plan.
Well, we had a mid-flight change of navigation. Barnes
turbulence.
Yeah, Barnes had to cancel, so we said, well, bring Joel back. Let's have that conversation now about funding of universities and how it's adulterating the process. And then Susan said, we haven't been kicked off TikTok. Maybe we can get other questions off TikTok. Joel,
let's talk about Tiananmen Square. Let's do it.
No, we just got kicked off.
Oh, that's old news. What are you talking
about? So tell us and Susan, you scroll up some or spool up some questions, and we'll get Joel to talk about this topic. So where do we start? I mean, I just imagine it's massive, and I imagine it's what is Qatar doing?
Oh man,
and China, we kind of know what they're doing. But it seems so odd to an average viewer, like Qatar. Where do they come from? Why are they involved in all this? Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, look, Qatar is a very strange country. They're incredibly wealthy, and there are not that many of them. And it's like there are something like maybe 300,000 to 400,000 actual citizens of Qatar, and the rest of the several million people that live there are all second-class citizens in a somewhat apartheid state. They have no rights, or virtually no rights.
Wow.
And all these oil sheiks that live there basically fell in love with radical Sunni ideology, and which is basically, by the way, kind of jihadist, global conquest, caliphatist, like we can run everything, right? And so the thing is, the problem is in Qatar, in Doha, there's money that does not sleep, and they don't know what to do with all of it. And the result is that they have billions of dollars that go into soccer stadiums, that go into all kinds of in order to create this kind of Alice in Wonderland idea that they're not really caliphatists, they're not really jihadists who are seeking a global hegemony. It's not really the case. And you know that because they have brands like Harvard and Brown and many other places hanging around their town in Doha. They have professors there, and where, by the way, you're not allowed to mention certain illicit topics. I mean, the policing of speech in those banner American institutions. Like, how does that happen? How does it happen that we have that? Like, we offer them these incredible logos, these incredible brands, and what they do with it is so sinister, right? They perpetuate.
Aren't these brands already, speaking of bottom up again, aren't they already policing their speech on their own campuses here?
Of the university, what the presidents of the universities will tell you is that, it's okay for us to take this money because they think it's them influencing us. But really, and I've heard this from the mouths of the president of many places, they said, really, it's us really that are the ones that are, that are changing them. They're coming here and they're getting changed. So look, I think that it's like, so look, we did a study on this. We blew this wide open, and this was back towards the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And I want to show you this. I'm going to pull up a slide. Can I share a screen here? Can your people see when I share screen? Or no?
Yeah, try it and see if you share it through Zoom. It should work.
Okay, so let me see if I can do this. Okay, let me try this. I'm having a little bit of difficulty, so I'll start talking this through, and then I'll get into the PowerPoint once I can get it. Okay, so listen, we did an analysis of funding across these universities. Then there are forms that the government has been collecting called Section 117 forms, which basically record all the grants more than $250, $250,000, excuse me, that come into our universities. And these grants basically come from every country you can imagine. There's been something on the order of $60-odd billion in these grants that have come into our universities since the inception of these the inception of the programs that have allowed this in. And what we found was that most of that money, but just about half of it, came in the past 4 years under the Biden administration. Okay, so you had really shocking, really special. So what we found was that money, like, we want to understand, like, what's happening with this money, where's it coming from, where's it going, and what's it causing, like, what's it causing on campus. So we did what are called geospatial models of the campus, and we wanted to understand sort of like where this where the money was going and what effect it had. And what we found was that where the money would show up, it would forward predict where anti-Semitic incidents would occur on campus, which campuses had them. And also it would predict the growth of protests against protest activity, anti-civic behavior against campaigns to get academics fired, all kinds of things, right? And the thing is, it wasn't just any money that did that. It was specifically when the money came from authoritarian regimes. The largest contributors were Qatar. Number three was number one. Number three was China, right? And so, like, the fact that we could see the impact of this money, that we could actually measure it, it was very convincing. And the people it convinced included The Hill, the Free Press, the New York Post, and it also convinced Congress, because they took that information and they used it to pass something called the Deterrent Act out of the Education Committee. And that bill, what it does is it creates new standards for transparency in our universities. That's always the key. We need to know where that money, the way that money was kept, Drew, was such a joke. You could look at the receipts that would come with these $250,000. You couldn't tell how that money was spent. You couldn't tell where it was going to or what it was for. If you're a corporation, you would have been thrown in jail for keeping your books the way we saw the books being kept by the federal government. It was absolutely criminal, and to see these,
we're all that's at universities. We're all coming to the awareness of the level of fraud and abuse that's out there. It's mind-boggling. This sounds completely part of the plan, at least in the last 3 or 4 years. So, what are the Saudis doing with all this? You know what I mean? If I feel like
it's a great question.
They should be. Because we know there's all kinds of, people have all kinds of ideas about the Saudis and the Muslim Brotherhood and, whether they're involved in 9/11 or not and all this stuff. But I feel like the modern Saudi state is a dampening influence on extremism. I feel like, for instance, we couldn't have done Iran without their sort of nod, right? It couldn't have happened. So what are they doing?
Well, listen, the Saudis are an interesting country. They as well as Egypt, many other places, have passed laws against the Muslim Brotherhood. That same stuff that Qatar is really supporting. Like, they have really pushed back on that because they realize that this isn't just, you can't control this kind of thing, right? It's not just a threat to Jews. It's not just a threat to the West. This is an uncontrollable evil, right? And they've all realized that to some extent. They're still dealing with a lot of old timers who are holding on to that, the clerics and some of the older statesmen of Ibn al-Saud are still holding on to the ideas of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's still gonna take time. You know, people who have that much money, who live in the desert, they have nothing but time, Drew. So it's going to take some time to see changes in places like Saudi Arabia. They're better than they have been, but there's still fundamentally like a kind of there's still a lot of changes, and there's a generation of people that still need to die before we really see the kind of reforms that I think the Arab world will need to sort of like, you know, see this not eliminated just at the upper echelons of some governments, but actually in the Arab street, right? That's where we really need to see these changes.
You getting anything off TikTok? Any questions there? I'm looking at the Rumble rants.
Let me turn on my mic.
Turn your mic on.
Well, somebody asked, is Qatar funding the U.S. institutions? I repeated that. I don't know who said it.
Oh, yes, that's what we're talking about.
You talked about it, yeah. Conflict in Iran confirms what I've already said. Extremist Islam and left serve the same gods of Baal. You know, just I can't really tell. These aren't really questions, but
well, you know, why don't we go back to this kind of like 501c3 Singham-esque stuff, because like this is a common tactic.
Yes.
It's not just the CCP, it's also the Muslim Brotherhood guys. Same exact tactic.
Right.
Well, but you know, I was talking to Mark Mitchell before you came in, right? And he was lamenting that that's also the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party. Like the Republicans should do the same thing or something. Fight fire with fire. Do you agree with that, or is this whole infrastructure need to be undone?
Well, what you guys said, I listened to the section, and I think the thing that Mark and you kind of converged on that to me seems like the most instrumental thing we can do is fundamentally this Doge-like approach of understanding where this corruption is and get really taking the x-ray, really looking at the warts, right? It's just going back to the conversation we were having about the kids in the table and not wanting to look at the warts and deal with the problems. What adults do is look at hard truths. That's what we do. And the truth of the matter is, Drew, it's like, I think part of what the MAGA coalition and the Republicans instinctually want to do is to get to the bottom of these things. And you are seeing some evidence of that, right? They're going after CARE. They're calling the Muslim Brotherhood, you know, a terror organization, right? And they're putting investigations into these corrupt forces. But this is all happening way too slow. It's all happening way too slowly. Yeah. I think
that was Mark's point too, right? And we need to get on this right away. Yeah,
he's right. But I think where we're missing the point is that, you know, I talk a lot about information disorder, not so much like disinformation, but, you know, we live in an age of information disorder. And, you know, it used to be that we had guilds that we could trust. You know, it used to be that we had media. We used to be that they're slightly more responsible media. It had its problems. All these institutions have their problems. But, you know, it's similar to what happened after the printing press. There's a very strong similarity. The institutions that existed before the printing press were built on, you know, one guy in a town who was literate. He wasn't allowed to have kids, and he told everybody else how to think. You know, and as soon as the pamphlets started showing up and everyone's talking to each other, right? You know, you immediately have opportunities for revolution. You immediately have distrust. And the equation changes from how do I figure out what the truth is to how do I get closure on the uncertainty? Who do I blame? Right? And that's where we are. That's kind of where we are now. That's kind of where we are now because of the internet and information disorder. So the way they solved
how did they get through that?
Here's how they solved that. Yeah, here's how they solved it. The way they solved that was through information fiduciaries. And that's such a loaded term, but basically what it means is there are two things they did. Number one, they had guilds. They developed methods to get better at figuring out what's really happening. They had libraries. Yeah. They had editorial processes. They had power sharing, right? The people themselves got actually more involved in this stuff, and you had guilds that specialized in this stuff that had to hold themselves honest because everybody else would. right? So those things, those networks of trust with special guilds came out and started working on this stuff. So it's not just that we need the government to be more efficient. They need guilds. They need people. We don't have the guilds. We don't have the volunteers who are trying to make sense of this so fast that they can use it faster.
Well, I mean, it kind of this shows like this and all the kind of spontaneous democratic use of the media and is kind of trying to find that, I think, trying to make sense of everything.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and if maybe I'm getting my dates wrong, but that can be excessive too. I mean, then you have the Spanish Inquisition, right? Which was well-meaning. It was really well-meaning. People, if you really read the history of the Spanish Inquisition, it was a bunch of intellectuals trying to get it right. But they went a little too far once in a while.
Oh my gosh! And it's so funny because that's exactly the metaphor I use. On the one hand, you have Martin Luther, and here's like the Jews and their lies, which is very high octane. That's the witch. So what people don't remember about this, and this is from Neil Ferguson, I think at Harvard. He was saying that the most popular volume that came out of the printing press was the Bible. Everyone knows that. But the second most popular piece in the printing press was the Malleus Maleficarius. That was a witch burning manual. And wherever that manual went, they burnt witches. Yeah, no, wherever that manual went, they burnt witches. Because with all this information, the most important thing you can figure out is who to blame, right? And of course, a lot of those witches were Jews, and a lot of those witches
not just blame. You're talking about the scapegoating mechanism.
Yeah,
really,
100%.
this is what humans do. Yeah, it's what humans do when they get.
So what's funny
when they go narcissistic, the three together, and so scapegoating is a very powerful impulse. So who's it going to be next?
So then what happens is you have the revolution.
Cancel culture was scapegoating.
The cancel culture was the Inquisition. That's the Inquisition. Yeah. That was the Inquisition. Yeah. So what happened was you had revolutionary forces that were genuinely getting out of control, and then you had top-down regulation that was absolutely brutal. And that's what's happening now.
Yep.
The big arguments are about free speech, censorship, revolution. It's the exact same problem that's taking place now in a technological domain. But we should be encouraged by this because it turns out it's an old problem. It's actually one we do know how to solve. So I think the way that NCRI tries to solve this is we're trying to.
Go ahead, finish.
Well, we're trying to embody that idea of how do we become a guild? How do we hold ourselves accountable, be responsible, and get the data that helps create transparency? It's that's the Doge move, right? Create transparency, and when you create that transparency, what the reason that's so powerful is that it allows everybody to make clearer decisions and clears the noise out of the disorder. It makes it obvious for everybody what the ground truth is. So
I'm so glad you came back. It's inspiring. I end this today's conversation rather inspired.
Touched on everybody who hates us.
Did you get any questions there from TikTok?
No. But I mean, they're listening, and I don't know how many people are out there, but thanks for watching. And we didn't get canceled on TikToks. We tried, but it didn't happen. So hopefully our bad luck is over.
But be that as it may, the fact that this is part of the working through process does inspire me. But I would urge us to learn from history and not burn witches and not get into religious wars, which is really just tribal wars that we could get into, and.
It's hard.
I like the idea about reforming, sources of trust. I guess is what it boils down to. Not even good information, just trust.
Yeah, and fiduciaries, it's like your doctor, or we have done this in the past, but what we see with Singham, what we see with the ways that our institutions are being inverted and turned against us, right? That's happening with the Muslim Brotherhood too. It's happening where so many of our institutions, we're not really being diligent about looking at where these warts are. We like to think we are, but then that half measure is what replaces the whole one, Drew. That's the problem. You're asking, you and Mike were talking about this. That half measure, it replaces the whole one, and unless we do the whole measure, unless we really push on this approach of creating transparency, we're kidding ourselves. We're not serious about seeing the truth of our own problems.
Yeah, I think that is a general note where history, could teach us. We have to finish the jobs. We have to finish the jobs we start. And it's hard. There's a lot of uncertainty about doing that. But Joel, I appreciate you being here so very much. I'm following you on X, and I hope we have you back very soon to update us on the progress of all this.
Yeah.
You're going to be my source of inspiration going forward. my new oracle.
Encyclopedia of knowledge on this.
Thanks,
stuff.
Joel.
Thanks to both of you. Susan, great meeting you. And Dr. Zhu, always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you so much. All right. We will get, don't worry, we'll get Robert Barnes back to talk about the Supremacy Clause. One of the half measures I'm wondering about is why the Supremacy Clause is not this. I mean, it's Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln. These people they just did it quickly and swiftly. When the federal authority was questioned, they did not evoke violence. If violence was brought to them, they would bring it back. But the supremacy is, let me specify for you where it is in the Constitution. I think it's Article 6. Let me get it specifically. It is Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Here it is. Everyone should be aware of this. The Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. It means that the federal law is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes everything. Now, that's why when Lincoln had to send troops and supplies into Fort Sumter, he put his hand on the Bible and swore an oath to do exactly that. There it is. And so he said publicly, I am obliged by my oath to send supplies to Fort Sumter. It is federal land, and I must do so. And I hope nothing happens as a result. And the South Carolinians got quite exercised about that and fired like crazy and destroyed the fort and started the Civil War. Now, we can't let anything like that happen, but there's something called the secession crisis in the 1820s. This was Andrew Jackson. Same thing. There's no world in which the supremacy of the federal law of the Constitution does not supersede everything else. That's not the land we live in. So we'll see. Let's see what it says. Trump threatens to invoke Insurrection Act. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I mean, Abraham Lincoln, when he would talk about the southern states, so-called, the states of Confederacy, so-called, was of the position that you can't leave the Union because you can't take a contract and one side say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's like taking a contract where my mortgage, I don't want to do that anymore, Susan. We're not going to pay anymore. I decided against it. That's what that's like. And he said, the southern states, Confederate states, so-called, are not Confederate states. They're just out of alignment with where they should be with the Union. And I think out of alignment is a nice way to frame what's going on in so many states in the country. All right, we're going to be gone next week. Kira Davis is going to sit in for us, and she's firebrand and always fun to have in here. And I'll be delighted to see what she does on her own.
Also, Herb Green said that was a great guest. So when we get 2 thumbs up from Herb Green, we know it's good.
We know we're doing okay. All right, good. G. Van Fleet's coming back around. I want to talk to Paul Alexander again. I'm really glad he's coming back because he was the one that really alerted to me. I didn't understand the deep state thing and how egregious they were. And he talked about his experiences in the State Department. I want to know what he thinks is going on now in terms of dealing with that rot in the government and what could be done to do the job completely, the way our guest today we're talking about. Salty Cracker, JP Sears, we got a lot of great guests coming our way, Chef Gruel. And you will be here. Let me make sure the dates are right. The time and stuff is right. Kira is on Wednesday. Is that correct? Better put that back up there again and make sure I got it right.
The 20th. Is it 20th?
The 20th was his Tuesday, which will be a 2:00 show.
I'm going to post this on Twitter or X, whatever you call it.
And then we are back at 2/4. Oh, no. We're just back at Tuesday and Thursday, the week we return. Are we going to try to do a Friday that week also, maybe? Yes.
We're flying on Wednesday, so it'll be Tuesday and Thursday.
This calendar is what's confirmed, but I've had some text back and forth with Emily of some Monday and Friday shows that might pop in with some interesting guests.
Yeah. Well, 1:30 is a Friday, so I'm putting it in right now on my calendar. And we've got
a vacation.
129.
Can you believe it? I think, unless Drew dies before Saturday.
How dare you?
He keeps getting sick.
But I think we ought to try to do a Tuesday. Who want to know what that is?
Drew, let's not do the schedule right now.
Let's not do it?
Here we go again.
Well,
Caleb.
I want to see when are we going to be coming back on the 27th or on the 29th? I can't tell.
No, we'll be back on the 27th. That's Tuesday. We'll be in New York. And then Wednesday we fly.
27th is not on the schedule. So we'll figure out who the guests are for that. Maybe bring Joel Finkelstein back in.
No, it said the 27th.
No, did not.
Oh, well.
That's what I was struggling with. Okay. Well, we appreciate maybe get Robert Barnes back.
And thanks everyone for staying on TikTok and not saying mean things about us so we get canceled. But we appreciate it. New thing for me to follow over there. And Rumble, we love you. And we also love the people on X, big group over on X. And we appreciate your viewership and for making us feel special.
And we're all learning something. I hope that's what's happening. I'm learning. I hope you guys are too. And
we're also on YouTube, but it's a small group over there. But they're regulars, and we love you too. Sorry about that.
Susan is not, but the rest of us are. And so
wait, what'd you say?
I know you didn't hear what I said.
I know. I'm focused on my own show here.
That's all right. I'm just saying that we're all learning something from these interviews.
I'm learning every day. This has been a really good week of great guests. And also Emily Barsh, thank you for everything you've done to make this happen. And especially moving our time today and still bringing on some killer guests.
And bearing with my dentistry and coughing and all my crazy stuff I've been dealing with this respiratory congestion, which has been weird.
You're going to come back tan and no cough and no sneezing.
All right. That should be true. So,
I hope so.
God willing, we'll see you a week from Tuesday, and you just stop in and listen to Kara next Tuesday. You'll enjoy her. Thank you for being here.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. Emily Barsh is our content producer. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.